Imagine being able to see what someone is going to do a couple of seconds before they do it. You could become the best boxer that the world has ever known, winning every fight before the first punch was even thrown. When you're a new player in Rivals 2, it feels like everyone is this clairvoyant and you're just hopelessly outmatched. But what would happen if you could learn this power of future vision yourself? Suddenly, you would be reacting to what they were going to do and vice versa until you only saw what could happen and not what was going to. In other words, you would be fighting on equal ground. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to do that. And once you learn it, playing against someone who doesn't know this skill will feel like you can see the future. I'm Duve, and this is a Rivals 2 guide about winning the neutral game. Let's get started. The neutral game is one of two aspects that separate players even at the highest level. But what is it? When neither player has an advantage, that's called neutral. The game is trying to get an opening on your opponent. Once that opening is landed, we transition to the advantaged or disadvantaged state. Make sense? Let's check real quick. Are these situations neutral or not? Pretty clearly here, this is not neutral. The Clarion has grabbed the Zetterburn, meaning she is an advantage. If someone has their options limited to only be defensive, then they are clearly in disadvantage. Okay, how about this one? This is a bit harder, but this is neutral. Even though shielding is a defensive option, the Clarion still has offensive options, which means her and Zetter can take advantage. Therefore, this is neutral. Okay, time for our final example. This is again harder. I would say this is neutral, but that the Zetter is worse off than the Clarion. He still has options, but is limited in the space to perform them. This shows us that you can be losing neutral without entering the disadvantaged state. Okay, so we have an idea of what neutral is, but how do you win it? I've been using the word option so far, and that's because it's core to winning the neutral game. You have to pick an option that beats your opponent, and essentially there are only three of them. You have attack, grab, and shield. Each of these wins and loses out against another if timed and spaced correctly. Attack will beat out grab, grab ignores shield, and shield negates attack. Those are your basic options, but what about special moves, special grabs, or parrying? Well, these are actually just extensions with additional properties. Special moves work around your character's elemental powers, but they're still attacks, movement tools, or a projectile. Special grabs are what I'm calling any grab that isn't performed with the grab button. They are more committal grabs that still beat out shielding unless you're Etalus with a hit grab, but they lose out to parrying depending on who you are playing. It can be a little confusing, so go check out the drop-down wiki on the specific grab you're looking at. Parrying adds a timing aspect to blocking, with a much higher reward but a higher risk as well. If you can make your opponent commit to an option while you choose the one that beats it, then you will win neutral. The structure is pretty similar to another game, the most balanced game in the world, rock, paper, scissors. But this is where a lot of new players lose interest, since they think fighting games and plat fighters in particular are just rock, paper, scissors, but in reality they aren't. I see this misconception all the time, and on the surface it makes sense. If you only have three options, and so does your opponent, how is it not? But realistically, it's a lot more like rock, paper, scissors mixed with tag. Let me explain. If we're playing rock, paper, scissors, I have to throw my option at the same time as yours. But in Rivals 2, I can just run away from you and throw my option earlier or later. This is why timing and especially spacing is important. Spacing can even change the properties of your attacks, grabs, and shielding, since it can make them non-committal or safe. To improve your spacing, you have to move in reaction to your opponent, which is why you'll often hear the advice of working on your movement. I have a full guide up on my channel for aerial and grounded movement if you want help with those aspects of your game. As you improve, you'll not only understand your options, but your opponent's as well. And then you'll start to anticipate what they're gonna do, and they'll be better at figuring out what you wanna do, and suddenly you have two clairvoyants fighting. But we're skipping ahead a little bit. To achieve this, we need to understand how to look at our opponents in neutral. So let's get back on track. While we're rewinding here, I'm going to ask for your support on this video. I'm putting a lot of work into these and would ask that if you think they're a good resource to share them or subscribe to the channel. You don't have to, but it would mean a lot to me. Thank you. Every character has a different effective threat range, and if you are inside of this range, then they can put pressure on you. This, for most characters, is a sphere. Each character can also move at a different speed, and as they move, their effective range moves with them. A good example of this is Maple, as she can move really fast but has a small effective range. Now, you might think that projectiles break this effective range, and that a character like Loxodon has a huge effective range because of this. But the word effective was chosen on purpose here. Projectiles have counterplay and are reactable with a more generous parry window, so it increases their range but not their effective range. Playing a character with a good projectile will change how you approach neutral though. The space that you control limits your opponent, and your goal in neutral is to limit your opponent's space so that you force an engagement that you are going to win. If we go back to the Zetterburn at ledge, this is a perfect example of limited space in neutral. This is why I said he was losing neutral, and it shows us one of the core principles that I think is important to internalize. These are that center stage has more options than the corner of the stage, that unexpected is better than optimal. Even if you control all the space on the stage, you still have to commit to an option, so making it unexpected is better than something that will cover 9 out of 10 options if you use it all the time. Your opponent is eventually only going to choose that one option that works, and your optimal choice will lose every single engagement. Your opponent can always run away. Even when there's no stage left, your opponent can run away, so you have to develop the feeling of when your opponent is going to approach. This only comes from practice and playing. Learn about habits and conditioning. The best players in the world still have habits that their opponents exploit, so the people you play definitely do too. Try to recognize what these are and how to counter them. For example, I realized that after I wave dash back, I always went in for a grab. This made it easy for an opponent who picked up on it to punish me every time I did this. Something to start practicing that will serve you better as you climb more is making your opponents think you have an unconscious habit. To continue our example, I will still wave dash back and grab until it loses an engagement or two. Once it does, I will usually overshoot where the grab would have been with a dash attack. The next time I wave dash back, my opponent will have to guess, am I going to dash attack or am I going to grab? And this adds to their mental load. Some characters are meant to win neutral more than others. Certain characters are designed around winning neutral more often with strong options that are safe. This might seem overpowered, but to balance it, these characters don't have as strong advantage state as a character with worse neutral tools. Don't hesitate.
赤炉よ。迷えば破れるぞ。
Decision paralysis is going to happen. Don't feel bad when it does, but just know it can lose you the neutral game. Something I do to help with this is talk out loud once I notice a habit or something I need to be doing so that I'm constantly thinking around problems. Okay, that's all great in theory, but what if your opponent doesn't play neutral at all? They either run away from you the whole game, or maybe they're standing still and waiting for you to approach, or maybe they just run at you and attack you. Well, weirdly enough, that person's playing neutral. Your neutral style can be expressed as a continuum between aggressive and defensive play. Aggressive play is trying to force engagements with your opponent and overwhelm them into making a poor decision. Defensive play is making it so your opponent engages you on your terms so that you can choose a winning option or so that they overextend. Starting out, you're going to fall on the more extreme end of this spectrum. What this looks like is either running towards or away from your opponent all the time. But as a player gets better, they start to come closer and closer to the center until they are flowing from aggressive to defensive strategy multiple times a second. This is what separates the pros from the rest. They know when it's best to play what style. Don't get me wrong, there are outliers, but an outlier who's more aggressive at top level is still going to be more defensive than a silver who plays defensively. This takes us to the topic of playing with respect for your opponent. All that means is that you assume that they are playing at the same level of offensive and defensive play that you are. Where this is useful for you is that playing with respect is something that's good for playing people your level or above, but every once in a while, you've got to remember that unless you're at the exact top level, there are glaring openings that everyone has, and you have to try to find them. So, by understanding what neutral is, the rules around it, and effective threat range, you have become clairvoyant. But so is everyone else, and to get better, you still have to practice. Here's how you do that. If you don't have your game set to auto-record your online matches, then change that by going here and doing this. Now we're going to review a close game you had. Doesn't matter if you won or lost. I want you to answer the following questions. How many times did you win neutral versus lost neutral? The exact number here is important. From your opponent's perspective, what could they have done to win neutral more? Did you have any habits that were exploited? What about your opponent? Where on the offense to defense spectrum were you versus your opponent? And finally, did you respect your opponent? Was that a good choice? With that, we're at the end of the video. Practicing your neutral is good, but like I mentioned at the start, it's one of two aspects that separate players at every level of play. The other is what happens when you go into disadvantaged or advantaged state. If you're in the future and these videos are already published, check them out on the playlist and screen. If not, sorry, but you're gonna have to wait. Remember, improving is a slow process. Think on weeks and months instead of days. Be kind, be safe, and have a good one.